And,
Good
and
afternoon.
and action.
All right, excellent. Okay, well, thanks everybody for joining today. I feel, Ting, your suggestion last week sparked lots of ideas about how to go about this. So thank you.
Oh yeah, thanks for facilitating this. Being fun.
Oh, good. So I guess we'll kind of kick it off. And as far as I got on this was one, to upload some documents, some artifacts into the folder. So I thought I'd just, mention what those things are. And then I attempted in the last 15 minutes, I'll be honest, to go through Cello's questions that he sent out. So I was Cello was like, maybe you'll have a PowerPoint presentation. I was like, I don't have a PowerPoint presentation, but anyway, but I can just talk through it, and I'm sure others of you will be able to chime in much more from your experiences at your utilities. So, okay. Okay, am I showing the folder?
Yes, I'm looking at it as well.
Okay, cool. All right. So this is where I have my notes from your questions, Cello. So I'll go through that. But first, some of the things I uploaded were our IT Project Management Office's project charter template. I also uploaded our IT pipeline report, which is where all of the projects that there's not enough resources to work on, but a few of them get worked on, but feels like not enough get worked on. Anyway, so that's the kind of repository of all the needs right now. And then, example of our IT project management office tracking meetings. So that's kind of reflective of our current, so I don't have a process map, but I will talk through kind of how it works. In general speaking, what we don't have today, and that I am working with our chief information officer on, is having a strategy that helps us to plan what and anticipate, or at least have a framework for what are the needs over the next 5 to 10 years, knowing that, of course, there's always need for a lot of flexibility. And so I uploaded a task order document for a digital strategy that we hope to have some consultant help to work on. But the first thing before we do that is to build a kind of system and data inventory. And we're just in the baby stages of that. So trying to figure out what pieces of information we need to gather. And so it's actually, Scott made a comment about like this being similar to CIP. I had this aha moment about this. I was like, oh yeah, it starts with an inventory, which is exactly like an asset management, right? Like step 1, build your inventory of what you have. So anyway, so we're definitely in the inventory, infant stages with this. I'm sure others of you are further along. But those are some of the pieces we have. I think in the future state, will have a digital strategy. We also want to kind of augment kind of the evaluation step that happens before it goes into this pipeline, so that we're really thinking about the business impact. And we do have an IT scorecard today. So there, and I didn't upload that here, but I could. So we're doing a little bit of evaluation, but we could do a better job to make sure we're putting the right things into the queue for IT. And then, so now I'm going to open up Cello's questions, which I only got partly through. But who is involved in this process? I put the business requester, the business sponsor, and various folks within the IT project management office. What triggers the process? The reasons could vary, but it could be because someone's trying to do something more efficiently, like in automating invoices, trying to provide a better level of service, retrieving data, replacing an older system. There's probably some good categories to explain that, but those are just top things that came into my mind. Activities and workflow, request is entered into actually this part is into an automated system, which is our ticketing system for IT. There's a project charter, a technical scorecard evaluation. At some point, requirements get written. But that was another thing I was like, well, that maybe is not part of what we decide is this part of the process, but it gets added to an IT pipeline and prioritized, then resources assigned, and then the whole system development lifecycle process begins. So some artifacts, I put a couple things in the folder, but like I said, future state, ideally we also have a digital strategy and a business impact scorecard, which we don't have today. And then this is, again, me just off the top of my head, not super thought through, but metrics that can be applied, time to go through this process, how well resources are utilized, of course, cost, including the total cost, not just the IT cost. And then some potential better measures are, percent of existing technology modules utilized, data used for multiple purposes, and I'm sure, and ultimately like metrics around like, are we helping the business achieve its objectives too? Resources, the business sponsor, IT project manager, and business analyst. Decisions that need to be made. Today, it's mostly like, should it be added to the pipeline and with what priority? I said there is a scorecard that IT uses. In the future, that's where having a business impact scorecard would help to hopefully make these decisions be better for the business as well. Because what happens today is like people putting in something new, but they're not real informed about what we already have, because we don't have we don't have the inventory, so people don't know, or or they're creating multiple projects for data when there really should just be one and using it multiple times. Data, as I mentioned, some of this does go into an automated system, but not all of it. And that system is it's called ServiceNow. That's used for ticketing. And then they use some Power BI for dashboarding, but some of it is, a lot of the PMO's processes are in Word docs, which is painful. So anyway, so that I got the 9 minutes or 8 minutes. I did real real quick. But so maybe I will pause here. And is this kind of the gist of kind of the scope of what we thought we wanted to share with one another in terms of like kind of what we do now, without myself having a process map laid out? But
for me, it really helps.
Okay.
I think all the artifacts, when people have, take a look at them, are going to be interesting and useful. It's at least my sense.
I should say too, by the way, Scott, I opened up yours and you have a PowerPoint presentation in there, and I was like, oh, I could just copy paste water for WSSC water. I was like, yeah, amen. Same, I felt kindred spirits with you all. Everyone going through that presentation.
And the pride of ownership there, you're more than willing to share, I think. My impressions are you're ahead of us in some places, and some places we might be able to perform to what you're doing. So I think that's exactly what I would be hoping to sort of gather through, at least through this part of the process.
Okay, cool, great.
That's really great. So I see that Kansas City posted 6 items and Washington Suburban posted 6 items. So other folks on the call, if you have stuff, you can check those things out and post some things that you think would be useful. In the past, this sharing of artifacts people really enjoyed that and got value out of it. So Did anybody else have any thoughts to share?
Yeah, Cello, I do. We haven't posted anything yet, but what we plan on doing, and Ting has a copy of this, is our IT master plan from a conversation that she and I had some time ago. It's a pretty thick document, either digitally or otherwise, but and there's a lot of projects that it spells out, and it's probably too big. It's a potosaurus when it comes to artifacts. So we have to figure out, and I think I found a way to figure out an easy way to get it down to something like what's going on right now with some simple Gantt charts with annotated. The other thing I wanted to bring up, and I want to let others talk too, I'm mindful of that, is we're undergoing something that's potentially transformative in that we've stood up a people, process, and technology group that's otherwise known as ODL, Organizational Development Leadership. And part of it is technology. And in technology, it has spelled out, we've spelled out some specific buckets of things that we're primarily interested in. And of course, data analytics is one of the probably 6 or 7 big buckets that are there. So anyway, that's the first step, and we've contrived a process that's actually in PowerPoint that's still being tweaked as to what the innovation, the technology portion primarily, but it's more holistic than that, includes people and practices. What does that look like within our utility, and how do employees and divisions and functional groups access it? If they have an idea, what happens to that idea, that kind of thing. And while I have kind of a technology focus, all 3 of the leaders in here have overlapping focus in people and practices. So what I see coming out of it, and I'll end here, is maybe even a process map of sorts that's a little bit more detailed, but we're just not quite there yet. I see you smiling, and maybe it's some other reason, but I'm trying to think what to do with it in the context of this. Okay, what to do in the context of what we're trying to do here that's meaningful and that complements other people's work probably, but maybe something a bit different too. And I'll stop there.
Tingle, I'm sorry, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I think it's very relevant, and I feel Yvonne the same. It's you guys are ahead of us on things, and also I'll also share our digital strategy. So I did start developing a high-level digital strategy about cloud or other things, but where we are is still further develop the roadmap on how do we migrate things to the cloud. What are the cloud strategies specifically? What are the cybersecurity strategies specifically? So so that's where our process, and I do really like Yvonne what she already shared some of that on the PMO office or project management. So that's something we are start to talk about. We don't have a robust process today. So part of my interest in I think it's on that one page list of things is a prioritization. And I think that itself, it's a governance we talked about. So that's going to be a good process to, I think we all have a process. It's really, I'm interested in learning how do you make that process working and get people's buy-in and people follow the process. So that's, I think that's going to be an interesting process and discussion there. But I thought it's great, and Scott, I'll check out yours too. So it's great. This is a great group. I really appreciate this sharing.
Well, thank you, everybody. I have a couple of things to.
Hey, Cello, do you mind if I go through mine really quick?
No, not at all. Absolutely. Sorry about that.
I only say that just because it's more discussion of artifacts. So if you have artifacts, I certainly don't want to step on you, but I thought
No. Go ahead.
I just wanted to point out a couple of small things if you go to this, and I'm going to steal the share for just a second, and try to get that stuff up. So hold on. Let me know when you can see my screen.
Yes.
Okay. One of the things I wanted to, so this is the list I put together, but I put a couple things in here that I think I have not heard from others yet. So I just want to point them out. So you mentioned the the PowerPoint, Yvonne, that we put together. And one of the things I wanted to sort of show you all. So this is Mike. This is like in. So we actually had an RFQ, actually had an RFP out for a IT master plan a couple of years ago, and what we determined from that for our purposes was we would get a 200-page document that would go on a shelf and we might never use. And so our reaction to that was with this PowerPoint, and I'll get into some detail about that in just a second. But the idea was break it down to where any of our key staff could go into any meeting and be able to pull this PowerPoint up and show what our strategic plan for data really was. And ours is specific. You'll notice it's a data management system strategic plan. And the reason for that is because IT, hardcore IT is different than data management, right? They're connected, but they're not the same. And the other thing I'll mention about this, and you guys can peruse this, it's up to you, but I think it's very intuitive. But one thing I wanted to speak to is our entire data systems management plan is in the context of our asset management program. And the reason is our theory on that was that the asset management program essentially has strategic enterprise-wide goals and initiatives that can only be supported by data, but data it didn't work in the inverse, if that makes sense. So our data management plan is part of our asset management plan for that purpose. And then it kind of walks through. So it's just the thing to pay attention to maybe is the highlighted titles. So that it says, here's the issues. Here are all the problems we have. We have lots of problems. There's 3 pages worth. And then here's the approach we're going to take to directly confront those problems. And then ultimately, here are the outcomes that we're after. And we did it in 9 slides. You might be able to do it in 2. It may take you, 200 pages, but it was the way for us to crystallize everything that we would have otherwise gotten in this, $150,000 plan. I'm not suggesting this is a model that anybody should use, but I will tell you for us, it's been much more action. I guess there's been a lot more action around this than had we got some big gigantic document. And the reason I attribute to that is the brevity of what we have. It's not so complicated or so complex that people can't understand it. And it's not overwhelming for us as a staff to update regularly. So that is one artifact I wanted to show. And then I have one other one that just really quick along the same lines. I don't know why my share stopped, but I'll go back to it here. We do business case evaluations for capital improvement projects. I wrote a case study on this last year, but we also do that for any technology that we purchase. I instituted this process 3 years ago. And the reason was we had what I call data system creep. We had everybody and his brother was asking for a new data system. And it serves 2 purposes, and I'll just very quickly speak to them. The first one is it makes people really say why they want what they want, right? And I'm gonna just pull one up, a very simple. This is a more complex one, but we bought a tool called Innovyze Info Asset Planner to do some asset management planning for us, and it operates very much like a regular business case. It has a problem definition. It has, can you address the tool with problem with existing tools? What's the organizational impact? There's alternatives analysis, benefits. There's an update section to say, yeah, did you get what you wanted out of the tool? How does it align with our strategy? So on and so forth. There's a costing up mechanism. And then at the end here is a actual metric. We did this sort of a rubric that we built. Again, it's not this one is a very large one. And I just want everybody to know, I put in some examples of large ones. So the FME one, though, is a really small one. If some of you are familiar with FME, it's a ETL tool that's very, very useful for a lot of other systems that we operate off of. And we've had incredible success in two ways with this. One is everything that we bought, we now know about. It's not engineering going off and buying something and we don't know about it and they're telling us to support it. And number two is when we get something, we can always pull it up and say it proved out as it relates to this process. Final thing, very, very quickly. This is the other thing I wanted to show everybody. So this is our data systems map. I promise, this makes sense if you zoom in a lot. I'm not going to get into all the details. The one thing I'll notice though, that was, and I certainly have some opinions on how to do this. I don't think we did it exactly the right way, but if you have any interest in that, let me know. But the one thing I want you to notice, you guys notice all these dots over here? So these are all Wildcat systems that we support that don't work with the rest of the ecosystem here, right? I suggest this as a again, before you go into an IT master planning process or whatever, you might take some time to do that work because you will see things that are really not very apparent if you don't do it, and you can go into that master planning process with a lot more information than you otherwise might. So anyway, that's that. Those are my artifacts. Any questions? First of all, steal them all. I got no pride of ownership. Just so long as you give me, you buy me a beer at the next conference and you put my picture on the bottom. And number two is any questions, please reach out and let me know if I can help you.
That's really nice.
Yeah, Cello, is it okay to ask a quick question? I think I'll owe you a lot of beers there, Scott, next time.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
Good for you. I like to drink, so perfect.
Yeah, well, I want to be respectful for everyone's time. For the data management strategic plan, so that's exactly where I want to start too. So for your strategic plan, is that also from the consultant you mentioned? Nope. From yourself? Okay, internally.
It is from our staff. Okay. And when I say our staff, I'm talking about, it's our data technology staff, but it's also our stakeholders, our executive team has input into it, and then we update it every year with the staff. So yeah, it's totally internal.
It's nice. Yeah, great. Thank you.
The theoretical underpinning was if we go out for a full-blown consultant IT master plan, if we can give them this and say, you must meet these criteria, right, that helps shape their plan.
Right.
But what's actually become of it is it's actually pretty useful just as it sits because it's easy for people to understand. It's very, it's not too much. It's very intuitive. Mm-hmm. And, the problem statement gives people a chance to bitch, which everybody loves to do about technology anyway. So it works. It gives them the opportunity to do that. We can say we incorporated that into the plan, and here's how we're going to address it. Right. I don't want to get into, cloud technologies or standing up, DMZ environments or whatever with my stakeholders. That's not what that's for, right? It's, hey, does this tool work for you? And then let us handle on the back end how to do it, if that makes sense. So a lot of times those IT master plans get too in the weeds, way too in the weeds. So.
This is really great. Any other thoughts or questions for either Yvonne or for Scott? I have a question for Scott. The data map you showed, maybe I couldn't read the small things, but did it imply that there is a lot of sort of one-to-one integration?
So
there's what I'm talking about, right?
Yeah, what I showed is actually just a tiny piece of it.
Okay.
Cello, but I'll explain to you sort of how it works. The theory that we operate off of, we did it for two reasons. One, as I mentioned, was to show out all those wildcats, right? So how many things are we supporting that don't touch anything else? That's one. And then number two was what we call the North Star systems. So what are the main systems that we use in this department that essentially most of all of the other applications that we have or other things that we do to support, operate around, right? So
Yeah.
like it's the four major ones are GIS, obviously, CMMS, our CIS, and our AMI, right? Those are the four main, and then the fifth one is sort of SCADA, but that's a different animal. And by doing the mapping, the way we did the mapping was it's essentially two steps. So this connects to Hanson, this is this, and it connects to Hanson and it connects to GIS. Does it go any further? Does that make sense? That's the idea.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, that's really nice. I'll send you a paper if you're interested. I did a survey of 45 utilities a few years back to look into how they, the systems they use, what kind of trouble they've had with them, how do they integrate. So it's a little bit dated, but kind of trying to look at that, same question and get a sense from people, where they're having trouble and stuff like that.
yeah, typically speaking, everything, all of our problems are integrated, right? All of our systems are separate, or they were, right? So the issue is how do you mix and match such that, you can't really get to problem solving until you get to integration, point blank.
Exactly. Yeah. I always quote Tolstoy, who his first sentence in the Anna Karenina, that all the happy families are happy in the same way, and all the unhappy are unhappy in their own way. so anyway, Scott.
Yeah, I really appreciate all the artifacts that everybody is providing. And just a comment, and Mike Sweeney might remember this from benchmarking, is that the number one problem that was identified with IT was the integration. Now people may not be doing as good a job on cybersecurity as they need to, but security was pretty well covered, but integration was definitely not. And it's really a global issue, for all utilities. What do people have in their desk drawer or their own computer and aren't really, integrated with anything else? And that means that the people aren't integrated either. So
yeah, great point, Scott. And I'll say this is my opinion, but I think that those two things are not mutually exclusive, right? The cybersecurity issues often have to do with faulty integrations, too many integrations, too many ports open for somebody to walk in, and so the more systems that you have, some are integrated in a way that and some are not, and you don't know why. And so those two things are certainly not mutually exclusive.
Thank you, Scott. Yvonne, did you want to? I think you may have to leave a little early. Did you want to make a comment or a suggestion before you? Did I get that wrong?
Maybe she left. No.
You're right. You're right. I'm switching to my phone.
Okay.
So I'm mostly going to be listening at this point out. No other comments to add at the moment.
Okay. Thanks, Scott.
I was just so Cello, you may have some specific ideas, or Mike or Ting or Yvonne, in terms of where to go from here. But in addition to sharing information, I think at the next meeting of the larger team, Ting, were you going to be presenting your work process? And if you were, and we can kibosh all of that if we want to, but I think that there's one graphic that Mike uses that sort of is a macro level business flow diagram that might be useful to you if you don't have all the details worked out and you were going to report back. And I don't know if how relevant that is, or whether people want to, continue with talking about their own artifacts or what.
Yeah, I definitely be glad to share where we are regarding the digital strategy and roadmap and all that. I'm very interested in seeing the process part of things. So, because that's the things we are behind. And then that's a part I like to leverage the expertise here. And then, I'm wondering maybe a little bit both sharing. I can do some sharing, and also Scott and Yvonne and Mike, you guys have down some of this. I think a bigger group might be interested, seeing some of the highlights, and also the other part is a little bit of hands-on. So I think it's still just get people to do something, and we can map out a process or something. I'm still advocating for like a governance model or something, and doing that, just we have a hands-on with the what cello you have developed, so we can apply that to develop a process here.
Right.
Thank you. Thank you. So I will share my screen to see if this will make sense to you guys. Okay, let me know when it's up.
It's up.
Okay, great. So what I thought that we might try is, and I posted this just template on Mural, that we could, as you work on the business process thing, this is a page that everybody could access. And let me explain, it's from Mural, and let me explain sort of, it is not BPMN. We can go to that later. But just to start the conversation, if we have this IT prioritization, it's of projects, in here we can, define the swim lanes, just change these names, and then start laying out the activities. There are, if you go around there are things for decisions and activities, and I can show how one would do this, and we could do it even as a group in a workshop, so that you could, then just place these things here and start building a conceptual visual representation of how you do your process that we could all discuss, review. And then here there are areas where you can, like in Mural, post your notes for brainstorming, not just during the meeting, but offline using that link, some suggestion on next steps, and just to see, because I had a sense that people really enjoyed actually doing things rather than just looking at others, looking at slides and looking at how should I say, artifacts are marvelous and wonderful, but I just thought to suggest, would this make sense to people? You could also put comments as sticky notes. For you who have a little bit familiar, I'd be happy to spend time with you one-on-one or with the group to give you a little tutorial of how to actually go about this. Would this make sense for the group?
Yeah, I think so, Cello. This is a great, so we could do something together and putting the sticky notes. I do think some of the tutorial might be helpful for folks. Maybe I'm wondering, we start the meeting 5 or 10 minutes early for people who want to learn this first. I don't know whether logistically that's possible, but just thinking about the time for next meeting.
Yeah, and what I'm thinking is, if folks are going to have bandwidth and time to start looking at this, we can schedule a time, because I can show some things here. But for example, if you're going to say, you know what, I'm going to use this to just start laying out what do we do, what the swim lanes are. Maybe this is IT department, or maybe this is engineering, or maybe you call it clients, and this is maybe.
Yeah. It's the same, yeah.
Whatever it is, and just to start laying out the proposals that are now in maybe a little bit different format, we can later move this to BPMN. I already have a template, but I didn't want to start there. Mm-hmm. So I just want to stop now and see if people, and the page would be available during the whole time to everyone. They could look at it, post their notes and comments. I just wanted to see if this is something that would be helpful. And I can think, I'd be happy to, like for next week, schedule, if you'd like, one-on-one calls, and we can talk through this and see, how it lays out. Anybody else who's interested, can join, and so that we have a visual kind of way to start describing what this process looks like. And I think that the stuff that I haven't looked at, the stuff that Scott Parker has posted yet, there are things that are directly applicable and would inform the building of this diagram. So I want to just see what the feedback would be on this.
Cello, I think this would work. I agree. One thing I'd caution you about time-wise is I've not done this digitally, but I've done it in facilitated workshops as a consultant. And you can get wrapped around the axle, which way the arrows go, decision, and all that kind of stuff. Rather than try to aim for perfection, if we could just get some sticky notes in what would be included in this swim lane, what would be included in this next swim lane below, and all that kind of stuff, and just make basic sticky notes and paste them, and we can connect the dots later.
Yeah, well, I think that, let's go, everybody can go at their own speed, put sticky notes, put symbols, whatever. It'll be a nice kind of chaos thing. Scott Haskins, you have your
well, I think that's a great idea. I'm just, and maybe I'm overstepping here, but I think there's some value in spending 5 minutes just talking about what the end in mind. And if I just happened to see this morning, I think earlier, something that Mike did that laid out, here are the major components of process. And we're not going to go start from there maybe, but it gives you a picture of where we're headed. And so as we get into the details, working step by step by step, activity by activity, then it you wind up having that kind of macro picture. And I think Mike Barnett knows what I'm talking about. But I think there would be some value in just flashing it up. I see that what you have up there, Cello, and there are obviously the components that you kind of addressed in your questions, include these kinds of things. But I was thinking more the process itself, which I don't know. Maybe I'm off base, but I saw Jenny's head nodding too. So if you kind of know, well, where we're headed in terms of the work process, not just all the questions that need to be addressed to do the process.
Mike?
Yeah, I was just going to interrupt you, Scott. Sorry. I think he's referring to that the email, just that high level
yeah, that's just one graphic
landscape diagram,
just
which I thought was a
5-minute thing. Yeah,
just meant to be suggestive, but I thought it was close to what Ting had sort of outlined in the proposal that she'd made.
So can you flash that up? I have to go to the.
Okay, hang on a second. I've got it here. Can everybody see that?
It aligns pretty closely to what Scott was talking about also,
So I mean, again, this is just meant to be suggestive, but IT governance does have a kind of high level workflow that's similar to the CIP workflow that we worked on in the past couple of years. And it starts, these sort of chevron looking things are usually a good way to just get oriented. And maybe the process that you had in mind, that the team has in mind, is a component of this, or it's the whole thing. But the general flow from top left to bottom right, I think is, it sounds to me like what the team is thinking about in terms of direction.
Sure.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah.
Go ahead, Ting.
Yeah, I can see this is a kind of a high level like Mike talked about, and then we could start the high level and then Cello getting to the Miro too. So getting to, because the Miro is a more of a detailed process on the probably starting from an IT initiative request that kind of expanded to investment decision. So that's really your swim lane is covering those two boxes there.
That is correct. You're absolutely correct. Now, this is high level, what Mike is proposing, and this is kind of what's called like value chain.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and so to show on this diagram where exactly it is, Ting, you know, and you picked it up correctly, is useful. However, it is a little bit high level, and what I was thinking is that we would just focus with a specific process.
Mm-hmm.
And to place it within the context, I think is very useful. My sense was that people were kind of keen to actually roll up their sleeves and start really, you know, kind of putting the meat on the bones, and we couldn't do that for all of these chevrons. So that was just a thought. Scott Parker.
Yeah, I largely in agreement with all the conversation to this point. I think a couple things that I would suggest. I like the idea of using sort of this. I actually kind of like both ideas. I like the idea of, at least to Scott's point, like, hey, why are we doing this? I mean, I think that's essentially what you're suggesting here. It's like, what's the rationale? I guess the larger rationale for approaching these issues and putting them into proper context. The only thing I guess I would mention is, I don't love the verbiage or the in the chevrons, so we might want to do some just review of those terms, because some of them speak directly to some level of IT and some don't, and that, at least to my take, and so that would be the other thing I would at least suggest a little bit.
Yeah, let me just, Mike, can I take over from the graphic? I want to.
Yeah, sure, Cello, go ahead.
What I've actually here kind of resembles in some way, but it focuses on things that we have already been doing. So because it also, Mike's diagram starts with, you know, business and initiatives and stuff like that. So we've been, for the past 4 years, looking at business process and performance management, and we have even framework for questions and assessment for performance, for metrics, for business needs and goals that then drive the things on the technology stack that we've been talking about. And Scott is, and everybody realizes that if you don't collect the data, if you don't have a way to acquire data, then everything upstairs is kind of on shaky legs. And then data management is a huge deal. If that is not done properly, data is not accessible, it's not verified, it's not complete, it's not, you know, the taxonomy is not in place. So a piece of equipment has a different name in CAD and SCADA and asset management. It makes very difficult. So it kind of builds up on these layers, and we can, you know, we have the framework for that as well in terms of assessment. So I think that they're not mutually exclusive at all. It's just a different way to attack it. And what I was thinking is that if we focus on one process, and which is part of the value chain, and we get that kind of look at, we go deep on that one process, then it will be applicable to other processes as well, to kind of not try to boil the ocean. So that was kind of, let me just see. That was kind of the idea behind suggesting, okay, let's start looking at a specific process. Are there any comments or thoughts on this?
I think
Sorry.
I don't know who that was. I just was gonna say I see what I totally understand sort of where you're. I guess I was thinking more of the presentation of it, Cello, right? Like
Sure.
Show the big, show
Sure.
it to the small, but when we start showing the big, let's make sure that our verbiage, again, I go back, that's correct relative to what the small is going to be. That's because
Absolutely.
otherwise you might cause confusion and say, well, wait a minute, why, because it's not this is sort of data IT related or metrics, whatever, however, we just want to make sure that we tool that verbiage to that as we present the big stuff. That's really all mine.
That makes a lot of sense. And what I can do is, let me just see, do people, if, for example, people would be comfortable with Mural, I'm looking for a way that we have something that people can share and access. I could lay out that value chain that Mike Barnett has shown on one of the sheets, and everybody can put in sticky notes, propose different names, so that we can have some conversation between now and the next meeting, and the things are adjusted, and we then line it up with this more detailed diagram. And I didn't even want to go to BPMN immediately, but just kind of start with laying out things in principle. Jenny, does that make sense?
Yes. I agree with what's been saying. I agree, especially with what Mike said, about 10 minutes ago, of people getting wound up around the arrows and how each task is accomplished. And so just really focusing on what those tasks are and this, maybe the sequencing, the general flow, but not
Right.
exactly what decision happens first or second, just more general. But I agree with the way the conversation's going.
Okay, so would it be, so we looked at this thing. Is this something that's worthwhile, guys, to use? Is this, Yvonne, I'm sorry that I can't describe all this on the phone, but you'll have access to it when you get back to the computer. So is this reasonable? Would this Mural be too onerous to deal with? I can help explain the best I can. If you have an idea for a different tool, I'm all for it. I'm just trying to find a way to collaborate on something that everybody has access to the same information, and that we don't have to like start from scratch.
From what I can see here, Cello, this appears pretty intuitive.
Okay.
If we could just kind of get I would call it the, elementary school training, I could probably work my way through it. I think most anybody could. So it looks like a lot of drag and drop and text. There's not a lot of difficulty to it, especially, and this is web-based, I assume. So this is something.
Yes, it is web-based, and it also would address Mike Sweeney's comments, because there are these sticky notes that you can put that if somebody wants to make review comments, but not necessarily how should I say, be changing in the diagram, you can put the sticky notes wherever. You could say, I don't like the name, the way you call this swim lane. I don't like, all that would be useful. But I don't.
Yeah.
This is kind of a whiteboarding tool. So anyway, Scott.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think that if you were taking those different elements that were part of your memo, so if you were let's just say you were taking, okay, now we're going to talk about swim lanes in terms of who's involved in this process. Then you could, in your brainstorming area, people could put in what their suggestions are, and then you could have discussion around it, and then
Sure.
Cello could basically drag and drop the, what the resolution was, for example, into the roles and responsibility area, for example, so we don't have a whole bunch of people trying to do it all at once, you know. But it could frame the discussion, and you can have the brainstorming area, and the same with the activities. If you're dealing with basically something between, you know, what are the major activities in this phase of effort, you can basically put your ideas up there, and then basically Cello or somebody could just make those adjustments, get the arrows in the right place, you know, those kind of things. I've seen Mike do that a lot, but you know, it's very, you know, interactive that way, as opposed to everybody having to be an expert on you know.
Yeah, if I get guidance on what kind of change people want to make, but they don't want to muck around with the mural, I will do my best to do that. A issue may arise when somebody, if somebody says, well, I would like to rename this swim lane this way, and then somebody else says, I'd like you to rename it another way. You know, but we can work through these. It's not going to be that difficult. So people can send me an email. They can put a sticky note, and I can change this from brainstorming area to suggestion area. Would you like me to do that?
That makes sense.
So this is suggestions, and this, instead of next steps, what would you? I can call this something else. So and if you you know, just post things there, I can monitor this, and I'm just trying to get a sense if this is going to be onerous or if this is helpful.
Maybe in next steps, Cello, it could be something like, you know, the consensus item or something. So if in the suggestions, people are putting stuff in there, you have some discussion around it, and then some decision is made, then it moves over to the other area, and then, you know, when you have agreement.
So you would say, so this is consensus?
Yeah, or
is this what you're saying?
Something like that. You know, it's things that you've agreed on, the team has agreed on. A question I have: Are we starting with or not with Ting kind of saying, well, for this particular, you know, stuff, here's what I have, or here's what
that's correct. Yeah,
am doing, and then others can basically, this is good for Ting actually, because people could enhance it. And
the idea was that and I Ting, if you'd like, both Mike and I would love to you know, work with you on this and help build this. And so if something is not quite right for others, just put comments, but you know, so that we have at least one thing worked out reasonably. And Ting can also look at what Scott Parker has posted as inspiration, or what Yvonne has, you know, Yvonne and Scott Parker can also participate in these calls, whatever, you know, it's fully open how we work on this.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah, how about we do it another meeting prior to the next Friday meeting? So Cello,
Sure.
I'll definitely need your help, and Michael and whoever else want to be part of that pre-meeting, so we can have something as a draft to share with the people, saying, you know, this is where I'm implementing with the process and with what you have built, and then we can just to get it more hands-on for everybody, to pick it apart or change it and to make it more for everyone, the bigger group.
Sure, Yvonne has hand up.
I was gonna real quick say, would it be helpful if like Scott and I like took a first stab at it, since we both kind of had some pieces of it, and maybe that would, you know, be a helpful, like, something to start from, just with putting our own pieces of the process up.
Absolutely, and you know, I can also make duplicate pages. I can make one page that you and Scott work on, and the other one that Ting work. We can keep it all the same page. Whatever is most helpful for you guys.
I think it's good to have multiple examples because each utilities are similar but different regarding structure, regarding how where they are. So this gave people example like artifact. I think it's so give people a flavor of how this work, and then they are also working with us as a process to do that. So I'm sure they will modify to do it on their own in the future too. So I like that idea.
Okay, so I'll make one of these pages for I'm gonna make numerous pages, several pages. So one will be the think page. So Scott and Yvonne, do you want to have one page or you want to have 2 pages? You want to have one together, like Yvonne is proposing, or you want to each have a different page?
Oh, well, now that I heard Ting's suggestion, I like that. Sounds good.
So if I understand correctly, that means everybody wants their own page. Is that correct, Yvonne?
Separate, yes.
Separate pages. Okay. So I'll make one for Scott, one for Yvonne, and that's what I'm going to name them. Does anybody else want a page to be working on? And then we can look at all these things and have a little bit of a workshop and see how to combine them, what makes sense. Pat?
I like using, I've used Visio in the swim lanes, and it's really a helpful tool, and especially with collaboration. I was chair of our HR work group last year, and we used this to develop the workflow. And we're a bureaucracy, believe me, we're a bureaucracy. We used it to develop a workflow for how to put in requests for positions to be filled.
Yes.
And and we had people that had zero knowledge of workflows and how to go about it, all the way through the experts. So, and it really got the conversation going. It took a little while to hammer out the final product, but it's a good tool.
I understand. Now, my challenge with Visio is I'm not quite sure how to make it accessible to everybody at the same time in this type of environment with people from different organizations. And
it looks like the same setup, though.
It's very similar.
Yeah, I mean, it's, if you know the logic of one, you can pick up the logic of the other.
Yeah. So did you want a page for yourself, or did you want to, and you don't have to answer now, but if people want me to give them a dedicated page, I will just replicate a page with their name. And if you want to work all together on one page, that's fine with me. I mean, whatever you think makes sense.
I'm here to be a mole and get information from WSSC to figure out how to be the gold standard in Maryland. So my preference is to be the best supportive person I can be. So I don't need a separate page.
Okay. Okay. And Jenny,
Ditto from Pat. This is not my area of expertise in terms of how we acquire technologies at our utility. So I'm here to learn from those on the call.
Okay, so I will set up these pages. I'll send you the links. I'll actually post a spreadsheet on our on OneDrive that will have links to these different pages, so you can go there and just pick the mural link to the mural page you want to be working on. And if you'd like, I will start. I can just take that stuff, the few boxes that I put in there. I can just take them out, or you can modify them and stuff like that.
Yeah, once you do that, Cello, I'll just reach out, and then I'd like to just schedule a call to talk with you before the meeting. Yeah.
Absolutely. So, and Yvonne and Scott also, if you'd like to, connect in between the meetings, that'd be great. We can get on the call and talk about this.
That sounds good.
Okay, so people are starting to leave. They have other meetings, so let me just stop the recording. Any